Hey guys, and welcome back to the Ghosty Girls podcast. I'm Christina, and I guess I should call this the Ghosty Girl podcast, singular, because today I am flying solo. Alicia has been feeling under the weather and she needed to take a little break this week. She will be back next week, so don't you fret. Full disclosure, I did have a really intense episode planned for today, and it's going to be part of a 2 or 3 part series. Not really sure yet because I haven't finished it. But I didn't feel right starting the first episode of the series without Alicia here and then having her jump in the second or third episode. So I am shelving that series for today, and we can share in the fun together when Alicia is ready. Before I dive into today's episode, I want to take a moment to highlight the importance of maintaining your mental health. I know times are hard. I know there's a lot of really crazy, vile, negative things going on right now in our country. Trust me, I know. I'm right there with you, and I get it. However, you have to take some time for yourself to decompress, stop the late night doom scrolling, unplug, and just be sure to take care of your mental health, you guys. Like, doing that does not mean that you don't care about things that are going on. It just means that you're taking the time to take care of yourself as well. And I know we as mothers, and even, if you're not a mother, if you're a parent, if you're a caregiver, or if you just care about humanity, you have to take good care of yourself in order to take good care of the ones around you. Your mental health is so important. I've had several of our listeners reach out to me personally after listening to last week's episode about Natasha Haidt, asking me, where to find like legit copies of the documents in the Epstein files. How do you weed out the fake news? What documents am I finding to be the most shocking? What are my feelings about the people that are in said documents? And I'm happy to discuss all of this with you guys and share the documents that I personally find the most compelling. So just reach out to me and I'll respond whenever I can. I mean, I've even had people reach out to me just to vent about how hopeless they are feeling right now. And if you feel the same way and you feel as though you don't have an outlet and you don't have anyone to talk to, hit us up at the Ghosty Girls Podcast at Gmail. Send us a message on Facebook. Send us a message on TikTok. Reach out to us. We will listen. And, we'll provide a sounding board because times are really, really hard right now and people are feeling really, really isolated. And I just want everyone to know that you are not alone. Alicia and I have made so many friends through this podcast. We've even connected with people in, Australia, Germany, Norway. Like, we love hearing from our listeners. We are here for you. We do care about you and we care about your mental health. If you ever need to take a break from the true crime podcasting, please do so. Book yourself a spa day. Watch some reality trash TV like 90 Day Fiancé. That's my favorite. I don't know, listen to some soothing music, go to the gym, take a walk in nature, do anything that you need to do to make sure that your mental health is in check. And trust me, I am preaching to the choir right now because I have had to do the same. I have had to unplug recently because it has really, really been getting to me. I mean, if you're a true crime fan, I'm sure you all know Bailey Sarian. She is huge in the true crime world. She just posted a video on YouTube last week just crying to her fans about how upset she is with everything that's going on. And it was so sad. She just kept repeatedly saying, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And to be honest, I don't know. I don't know what we're going to do, but I can tell you what the Ghosty Girls are going to do. We are going to continue providing an outlet for, just to forget about things. We're going to talk about true crime still. We're going to talk about weird stuff like aliens and Bigfoot. We got a lot of stuff in the works. And we're also going to provide a sounding board for you guys. So seriously, if you need to talk to anybody, reach out to us. I promise you, we will get back to you. Sometimes we take a little bit. We've got a lot going on. We've got jobs. We're mothers. We're partners. We're friends. We've got a lot of stuff going on, but I promise you, we will get back to you. So now that I am done with my TED Talk, with Alicia being on a break, instead of bringing you an entirely new case this week, I figured we could revisit one of our most downloaded episodes. And that is our episode on Christa Pike, who is the youngest woman to ever be placed on death row in the United States. People absolutely loved this episode. We have gotten so much positive feedback on it. If you haven't listened to it, you probably should, but I am going to provide a rundown of the case before I get into the updates because there have been some recent developments with Christa Pike. So let's get into it. Christa Gale Pike was born in Buckley, West Virginia on March 10th, 1976 to parents Glenn and Carissa Pike. Like so many other serial killers and violent criminals, Christa's childhood had no shortage of trauma. Her mother was a belligerent alcoholic. People have even alleged that Carissa heavily drank throughout her entire pregnancy with Christa, which we all know can lead to severe problems, including fetal alcohol syndrome. Now, I haven't found anything, stating that Christa has suffered from fetal alcohol syndrome, but we do know that she was born premature and she was in the NICU for a while. So she did have issues due to her mother's alcoholism. Christa's parents got divorced when she was very young, and Carissa had a variety of men coming in and out of Christa's life. Christa even alleges that she was sexually abused by these men while she was still in diapers, which is awful. And I know that we've said this before, but I'm going to say it again. It is okay to feel bad for the child version of Christa Pike. No one deserves to be brought up like that. Christa was ultimately shipped off to live with her grandmother, who was also an alcoholic, who would physically abuse Christa and do things like lock her in a closet for long periods of time when she misbehaved, which was pretty much all the time because Christa was not an easy child by any means. Christa eventually ended up with her paternal grandmother, Delpha Pike, and Delpha was actually a really good mother figure to Christa, providing that motherly love that Christa never received from her own mother. Sadly, Delpha was elderly and she was also battling cancer, which she succumbed to. Christa was never the same after this, and people went as far as to say that something in her quote-unquote snapped when her grandmother, Delpha, passed away. Things never got any better for Christa, and she actually attempted suicide at the age of just 8 years old when she was forced to go back and live with her mother. Instead of providing the help that her daughter so desperately needed, Carissa decided that the best way to parent Christa would be to attempt to be her friend. They would get drunk together, they would smoke marijuana together, and Christa eventually became so unruly that her mother shipped her off to live with her father. And this actually started a continuous back and forth between the two households. And each parent would send Christa back to the other when they could no longer handle her anymore. So this happened for years. Her just going back and forth between her mother and father, bouncing between houses like a ping pong ball, until the final straw happened for her father. And that was when he began to suspect that Christa had actually begun to sexually abuse her 2-year-old stepsister, which is awful. But we do know that this is very common. Many children, when they're sexually abused, they end up to be sexually abusers themselves. Shortly after being sent back to her mother for the final time, Carissa was at her absolute wit's end with Christa, and she ended up sending her to Job Corps in Knoxville, Tennessee in the summer of 1994. And Christa began career training to become a nurse's assistant. However, instead of focusing on making something of herself, Christa was focused on her new self-proclaimed Satan-worshipping boyfriend, Daryl Shipp. But there was just one little problem, and this problem was a beautiful, tall, thin, blonde teenager named Colleen Slemmer, who had just joined the Job Corps and had caught the attention of Daryl Shipp, or at least that's what Christa Pike thought. Now, it's important to note that by all accounts, Colleen wanted nothing to do with Daryl. She didn't flirt with him. She didn't want him as a boyfriend. But for some reason, Christa became fixated on Colleen, obsessed with the idea that she was trying to steal her beloved Daryl away from her. So now we're going to shift the focus to Colleen Ann Slemmer, who was born on September 20th, 1975 in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, to her mother, Mae Martinez. And sadly, her parents separated when she was young, like Christa Pike's parents. Her mother, however, ended up marrying a man who was an amazing stepfather to Colleen, and she had a very good, loving relationship with both her mother and father. Now, they ended up moving from Pennsylvania to Orange Park in Florida, and Colleen, although she did well socially, she struggled in academics. Some resources say that she had a learning disability, which made reading more difficult for her, which caused her to get so frustrated that she actually dropped out of high school before graduating. Colleen ended up working in the fast food industry, but she didn't want to do this for the rest of her life. She actually wanted to make something of herself. So that's when she decided to join the Job Corps. And just a little bit about Job Corps for anyone who's never heard of this before. Job Corps is a career training center that is funded by the government and was designed to teach specific trades to underprivileged individuals between the ages of 16 and 24. And it actually provided housing as well. So kids could live there, they could go to classes, and Job Corps started out with the best intentions, but it soon ended up as somewhat of a dumping ground for troubled and violent youths. Colleen and her family were not aware of this, and in the summer of 1994, Colleen packed her bags and left for Knoxville, Tennessee to join the Job Corps computer training program. And when Colleen got there, she was not impressed with the building. The Job Corps building in Knoxville, Tennessee was essentially a decrepit motel complex that had been revamped into like a makeshift school compound. The dorm walls were painted black and the ceilings were painted purple, which is strange for like a school dormitory. There was little to no supervision, and kids were said to just like run down the hall screaming obscenities. They would steal things out of each other's dorms. It was basically like a glorified jail for teenagers. Unfortunately, Colleen had signed a contract with Job Corps, and she had to stick it out. So soon after she joined the Job Corps, this is where she ran into Christa Pike and Daryl Shipp. Christa began relentlessly bullying Colleen to the point that Colleen actually called her mother at one point and told her that she wanted to leave because the bullying was just too intense for her to handle. Her room was like being ransacked. Things were being stolen from her. At one point, there were allegations that Christa was standing above her when she was in her bed holding a knife. Colleen obviously did not feel safe there. But like I stated earlier, you sign these contracts in order to join the Job Corps, and Colleen still had another 6 months left on her contract. Colleen's mother encouraged her to ride it out, to see it through, to finish up. It's only 6 months, but telling her daughter to stay ultimately ended up being something that Colleen's mother would forever regret. On the night of January 12, 1995, Christa, along with Daryl Shipp and a friend by the name of Shadala Peterson, invited Colleen to hang out with them, walk to Blockbuster to rent a movie, smoke some weed in the park, and just squash all of the drama. So Christa was essentially like trying to tell Colleen, like, hey, like, let's put this all behind us. I want to be friends. And Colleen was really excited about this invitation. She finally felt like the bullying was going to come to an end and that she could just have peace with Christa. Unfortunately, being a kind-hearted person and trusting Christa Pike became Colleen Slemmer's most fatal mistake. The three teenagers lured Colleen deep into the woods in Tyson Park, where Christa ambushed her and began viciously beating her. Colleen desperately tried to get away from her attacker, but Daryl Shipp, who with Shadala Peterson had just been standing there watching up until that point, and he actually stepped in and dragged Colleen back so that Christa could finish her attack. After beating Colleen in the head multiple times, Christa then pulls out a box cutter and begins slashing Colleen all over her body. Christa then slashes Colleen's throat. Her and Daryl carve pentagrams on her body, and then Christa picks up a chunk of asphalt and beats Colleen in the head until her brain matter was exposed. Christa then danced around Colleen's body in celebration and took a piece of Colleen's skull as a souvenir, which she put in her jacket pocket. Back at Job Corps, Christa excitedly told her friends about what she had done to Colleen, and she even goes as far as showing them the piece of Colleen's skull. The next day, Colleen's battered and bloody body was discovered by a groundskeeper and is identified as the body of 19-year-old Colleen Slemmer. After talking to students at Job Corps, Christa's name repeatedly came up. She's brought in for questioning, and she immediately confesses to Colleen's murder. Christa, Daryl, and Shadala are then arrested and charged with the first-degree murder of Colleen Slemmer and taken into custody. For her involvement, Shadala Peterson received 6 years of probation. Daryl Shipp was found guilty of murder in the first degree and sentenced to life in prison. Christa Pike was also found guilty of first-degree murder, and on March 30th, 1996, Christa was sentenced to death by way of electrocution at the age of just 20 years old, making her the youngest woman ever sentenced to death row in the entire United States of America. But Christa's appetite for violence didn't stop there. And in 2001, while she was on death row, Christa allegedly strangled a fellow prison mate named Patricia Jones with a shoestring during a fire drill at the prison. Christa was charged with attempted murder and was ultimately convicted of that in 2004. In 2012, Christa made headlines yet again when she was caught formulating a plan to escape with the help of a former prison guard. Christa's execution has been delayed several times due to numerous appeals as well as the COVID-19 pandemic. And as of the time of our recording last year, Christa had not yet received an execution date. However, that changed in September of 2025 when Christa was given her official execution date of September 30th, 2026. She will be 50 years old by the time that date comes. And if all goes according to plan, Christa Pike will be the first woman to be executed in the state of Tennessee in 200 years, which is a huge deal. On January 8th, 2026, so just a little over a month ago, Christa Pike filed a complaint in the Davison County Chancery Court arguing that Tennessee's new death penalty protocol violates her constitutional rights. Apparently, the state of Tennessee used to use 3 drugs via lethal injection to carry out the death penalty: But in December of 2024, the state implemented a brand new protocol, which consists of the usage of only one drug, pentobarbital, which induces cardiac arrest, thus resulting in death. Now, exactly how does this new implementation violate Christa's constitutional rights, you may ask? Well, according to her complaint, which I have linked in the show notes, quote, the protocol is plagued with the same issues that have marked botched executions for decades: secrecy, intentional omission, inattention to detail, and untrained and unlicensed prison personnel attempting to fill a medical role. Because of these failures, the new protocol is sure or very likely to result in unnecessary and super added pain and suffering, terror, and disgrace, end quote. So yes, the very person who brutally slashed Colleen Slemmer with a box cutter multiple times, carved a pentagram into her forehead while she was still alive, slashed her throat, and then bashed her in the head with a piece of asphalt, is now worried that her lethal injection will cause her unnecessary pain and suffering, terror, and disgrace. And you guys can't see me right now, but I am in fact rolling my eyes so hard that they damn near popped out of my head, because what in the actual fuck? But the complaint gets even worse. Because in this complaint, Christa's lawyers argue that her First Amendment right is being stripped because her quote-unquote spiritual advisor would be excluded from being present for her execution, because Christa, who was once a practicing Satanist, is now a practicing Buddhist. The complaint also states that Christa suffers from a blood condition called thrombocytopenia, which causes the insertion of a needle to be difficult due to her quote-unquote small veins. Her lawyers argue that with this condition, the usage of pentobarbital would cause quote-unquote blood froth to accumulate in Christa's lungs, which would essentially cause her to die by drowning in her own blood. And I just want to take a moment to point out the fact that Christa beat Colleen Slemmer so badly that Colleen was gurgling and choking on her own blood. So this is very ironic to me. Now, according to Tennessee law, in order to challenge the death penalty protocol, the plaintiff, Christa Pike, must provide an alternative execution method, which is really interesting to me. And I'm going to tell you right now, Tennessee doesn't fuck around when they give you the death sentence. So if you're going to commit a murder, don't do it in Tennessee. They will kill you back. Christa's lawyers argue that participating in any process leading to one's own death is a strict violation of her newfound Buddhist beliefs. They do, however, suggest that perhaps Christa be executed by a trained medical professional via insertion of a butterfly needle. Other allegations of note in the complaint is that Christa's lawyers allege that she suffers from severe mental illness after being in solitary confinement and having essentially no human contact for 25 years. They also argue that if they continue to isolate Christa in her final weeks of life, this would be, quote, particularly cruel and arbitrary. And you know what I find particularly cruel and arbitrary? Oh, I don't know, beating the shit out of someone, carving them up with a box cutter, slitting their throat, and then bashing them in the head repeatedly with a piece of asphalt. But I digress. I don't know, you guys. This case really pisses me off. Like, it's pissed me off ever since my Grammy took me to the Kmart and bought me this book when I was like 10 years old or however old I was at the time. And it just never seems to end. It never seems to end. And this is my argument about the death penalty. When you sentence someone to life in prison without the possibility of parole, you don't have all this fucking nonsense. Here we are, we have an almost 50-year-old woman who committed a crime when she was 18 years old, and the taxpayers are still fucking paying for all of her bullshit lawsuits. I would honestly love to know how much all of this has cost the state of Tennessee versus how much it would have cost for her to just rot in prison for the rest of her life. And I feel so bad for Colleen's family because they've been forced to constantly relive this over and over. And I also read that as of 2015, Colleen's mother still has not been able to properly bury her daughter because Colleen's skull and all of its pieces are still in the possession of the state because Christa's sentence has not been carried out yet. And if that's not completely fucked, I don't even know what is. So that's where we're at in the Christa Pike case. I guess we're just going to have to wait until September of 2026 to see how this plays out. I'll be really curious to see if the state of Tennessee will actually execute her or if this is just going to keep going and going like it has for all of these years. Again, I just feel really bad for Colleen's family, particularly her mother. I don't really know how, as a mother, you could find any peace with anything that's going on, knowing that her killer is still in this legal battle and Colleen's mother can't even get all the pieces of her daughter back to give her a proper burial. But I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Sorry that this episode was kind of brief, but like I said, I didn't want to go into starting a series without my counterpart. So let's send Alicia some well wishes. We will be back next week with part 1 of my 2 or 3 part series. It's going to be pretty gnarly, not even going to lie. I started it. I don't want to give any spoilers, but I started it and I thought I knew everything about the story, but I just kept diving deeper and deeper and it just got worse and worse. And this person is absolutely diabolical. It is. You guys are going to enjoy it because we all love fucked up things. That's what we're here for. Anywho, I hope that you guys enjoyed this little mini episode with just me. I have to be honest, I feel really weird sitting here and talking into a mic like I'm having a conversation with myself. So feel free to blow up the comments and let me know how badly I did with this. I hope that you guys have a great week. I know in the East Coast, we are supposed to get hit with a blizzard. It just started snowing. I am so over all of this weather. I don't know about you guys, but I want to be on a tropical beach, getting my tan on. I have had enough of this winter weather. I am not built for this, all right? Hang in there, guys. We got this. We will be okay. Okay? I promise. We will be okay. Join us next week for part 1 of my series. And we will see you next Tuesday. But don't be one. Bye.